Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Parenting Hour. You're tuned into Unity FM 93.5 here in the West Midlands and 105.1 if you're tuned into us on Inspire FM. Welcome to our first Ramadan show. MashaAllah, the time goes by quickly, the days go by quickly, and here we are already in our first Ramadan week, our first week of Ramadan, inshallah, and actually having our first show with you. As promised, we have Brother Saeed with us, and we are doing an in-depth discussion on Ramadan each week as we work through Ramadan, inshallah. May Allah help us indeed to be able to reflect on ourselves and for myself and everybody getting the best out of this month, this blessed month, inshallah. This is a pre-recorded show. However, if you do have any queries or any questions, please do ring in the studio at 0121 772 8892 and they will pass them on to us, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum, Brother Saeed. Welcome to the first week of Ramadan.
Alaikum salam, Sister Kathleen. Welcome. I hope Ramadan is going well for you, inshallah. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us the goodness of Ramadan, enable us to achieve, inshallah, the best that we can be in Ramadan.
Inshallah, there's always trials and tribulations, and I'm so glad I have you here this evening, inshallah, to help me to put me on the right path, inshallah, as I go progress through Ramadan indeed. And we want to talk a lot about family, and this is lovely topic. As you know, I love talking about family and parenting, inshallah, and I know this evening we're going to focus a lot on that, inshallah, to make sure we've got that family environment correct, especially as we're starting to go through the holidays very soon. So in the next week, we'll have Easter holidays and the children will be off school and we'll be very maybe stretched because of that. And it'll test us a lot with, as you mentioned last week, about our anger and our patience and all of that. So we need to focus on the family this week and see how we can get that right, inshallah. So I that's what you had in mind as well as we talk about this evening show?
Inshallah. Jazakallah khair, Sister Kathleen, and assalamu alaikum to all the listeners, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless you all, and I hope you're having a good Ramadan, inshallah. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, alhamdulillah rabbil alameen, wa salatu wa salamu ala Sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ajma'in. We praise Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and we thank him that he enabled us to be in the month of Ramadan, and we ask him to grant us goodness and during this month, and to grant us the blessings, the forgiveness and the success of Ramadan, and to make us from those who are successful, those who are accepted, and those who have sincerity in their actions and in their words and in their deeds, inshallah. So yes, absolutely. I think one of the things we spoke about before in the previous session was to think about our family time and to think how we as a family come together, and how Ramadan can bring the best out of the family by being able to realize that the family environment is so important and so vital to nurturing goodness, to developing people to be, inshallah, successful in this life and the hereafter. And the family environment is the key for any success in our worship, in our education, in our relationship. The family environment is the key to enable us, to give us that springboard, to give us that initial step to be able to progress and to be able to achieve. So when we're thinking about the family environment, it's so important that we think about it in terms of how do we create that family environment. So we start with the basics, that we know that the basis of marriage and the husband and the wife are the backbone and the cornerstone of the family. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when he spoke about marriage in the Quran, he said, from his signs, he has created for you spouses, from yourself spouses. So you may find sakina, litaskunu ilayha. You will have sakan with one another. Sakan means that you find an environment that is homely, that is tranquil, that is peaceful, that is welcoming, that is nurturing and supportive. وَجَعَلَ بَيْنَكُمْ مَوَدَّةً وَرَحْمَةً, and he has created between you a mawadda that is demonstrated with love through actions. So we do things in a loving manner as a family through our actions, through our words. وَرَحْمَةً, and a sense of compassion, a sense of mercy. That is the glue that holds the family together. That ability to be able to show kindness, to show mercy and goodness to each other. And this is the key thing, that the example of the Prophet ﷺ, how he demonstrated this. He said ﷺ in a hadith, the best of you are the best for their family, and I am the best for my family. And the Sayyidah Aisha, when she described the Prophet ﷺ, he was the best for his family. He was, when he would be with his family, he would help his family, he would support his family, but also he will show so much generosity and compassion to his family, sallallahu. So he's our example, and following his example, inshallah, during this month of Ramadan will enable us, inshallah, to condition and to establish and to develop good habits as a family that will carry us, inshallah, for the rest of the year, and we will be able to embed these qualities, these good habits, inshallah, so they become a template for our family in the future.
MashaAllah, mashallah. So parents need to really think about this and how they create that family environment, how they are creating that glue. Because often our parents, and I know when they attend parenting courses, etc., and they learn new skills, they learn the knowledge, maybe the theory and things like this, but it's putting it into practice that they find harder. And I often say to parents, it's not what you say, but what you do, you need to be mindful of. So how can we help to create this family environment, to create this glue that we need, that mercy, that kindness? What do they need to do to create that environment?
The first thing, I think, when we think about the environment, and we think about, often, if you think about the family home, often people think about the family home in terms of the structure, in terms of the, where people live, in terms of the, is it how big the house is, or how big what sort of furniture we're going to have. But those are secondary, because what makes a home is the people who live in that home, who live in that house. So what we talk about is the conduct, is the behavior, is the relationships that make life fulfilling and make life, give us that boost and that feeling of belonging. So to do that is what we said about the three. So it's firstly, how do we find Ramadan is the month of calmness, the month of patience, the month of, we said in the previous session about forgiveness. So how do we create an environment that is firstly sakina, has sakina? So when we think about sakina, what does that look like in our homes? What's it like to achieve inner peace? So in order for us to achieve inner peace, we have to stop the things that cause that friction, the things that cause disharmony in the family. So it's about refining the ways. So thinking about Ramadan as a month of purification, a month of refining our behavior and conduct within the family environment. So think about the things that cause distress and try to remove them. Think about the things that cause friction and try and alleviate them. Think about the things that cause tension and get rid of them. And think about how do we replace them with good things. So what do we do, what we will need to achieve sakina. So for example, to achieve sakina, that family come together during iftar time, they remind each other of dua, to make dua, they support each other. So, the mother is not just left to do the cooking, where everyone is just waiting at the table, to be served, that everyone is helping out, everyone is doing their bit. The children are helping the mom, the husband is helping. Every member of the family is doing their best. everyone has a smile on their face. Everyone is, making sure that, each person is looked after. And is that ability to show connection in the family. So that's the first thing, is finding sakina, is everyone is just happy to be at home with their family because they feel supported, they feel loved, they feel they belong, they feel they are connected. Secondly, is to show mawadda, is to show love to each other through wanting us to, as family members, to achieve the best we can, and to wanting goodness for everyone within the family environment, and to show that love through the actions, through the words, and being able to show that through generosity to each other. And then number 3, we said to show rahmah. Rahmah is compassion and mercy. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, Ar-Rahman, the most merciful, Allam al-Quran. He is the one who taught you the Quran. So when we're thinking about rahmah, we want goodness for our children. We want goodness, so we teach them good akhlaq, good manners. We teach them good knowledge that is going to be beneficial for them. That's part of the rahmah. We make sure they are safeguarded and protected. That's part of the rahmah. We make sure that, everyone in the household feels part of that family, feel connected, feel supported, feel loved. That's part of the rahmah. So it's those kind of environmental conditions that enables all members of the family to grow, to flourish, to be the best they can be. And in order for us to do that, each person has to take responsibility for the role they play in making the environment a conducive environment, to be able to make it an environment that will enable all members of the family to get the best out of Ramadan, inshallah.
Inshallah, mashallah, you went very much in detail there, and it's wonderful, and I can see this environment coming together indeed in a lot of families. And I'm just, what you reminded me of when you were talking there of maybe if families have different age group of children, sitting down together and discussing how can we make this environment better, and what do we need to do as a family. So something like family rules, but getting everybody involved, having a shura, a meeting to have everybody involved in this, and so that the younger children as well as the older children and the parents are all in agreement of the environment that they want to achieve. What do you think of that concept?
Absolutely. I think is absolutely using Ramadan to create that kind of level of connectiveness, but also to create that level of everyone has a role to play, and being able to have a dialogue with members of the family. And so it's not about just one person setting the rules and one person handing down, targets or objectives, but is about the whole family coming together. And we use this as a learning environment where we have that concept of shura and tashawur, being able to have a dialogue and to think about each member of the family contributing to that plan towards having a success in Ramadan. So it's that ability to engage with each member of the family, and to be creative as well, to allow the children to set the goals, to develop the goals, and for us to show them through our example that we are inclusive, that we are accommodating to all the members of the family, regardless of how old they are or what the needs they have. And then the other thing I think is really important to think about is the husband and the wife, how they are in their interactions in Ramadan, because that will show the children what's it like to be a fasting person in Ramadan. If the husband and the wife are arguing with each other, or if each one is like not talking, or each one is feeling fed up, or not smiling, or then what sort of messages are we giving to our children? We might say to them that Ramadan is, the month of forgiveness, where the husband and wife are not talking to each other. Or they might say the month of generosity, and the husband and the wife are not helping each other. They're not being generous to one another. So actions will speak louder than words to the children, but also making the children see the actions, and then at the same time develop their own actions by being creative, by engaging with them and say, okay, what does Ramadan mean to you? What do you want to achieve in Ramadan? How we can support you to achieve your goals. So for example, if you want to embed generosity in our children, so the family, when they break their fast, they are grateful for the food they have and the blessings and the safety and the security they have. Maybe we want to say to our children, what about those children who don't have any food? What can we do to help them? What can we do to maybe put in something aside, every day, that we can put it towards a family collection that we can give to local charity, that helps children who don't have any food, or help people who don't have any resources. So when we do that, we can encourage our children, and we can enable our children and empower our children to think not just about themselves and their own needs and their own hunger, during the day when they're not eating, but to use this as a motivation to think about children who don't have food, to think about people who don't have shelter, think about people who don't have medicine and safety. And that's how we nurture values in our children. So we're not just making this a talking point, but we're making it an action point, and we change behavior in terms of thinking about ourselves, but moving beyond that and thinking about other people, and thinking about how can we show that level of empathy. And Ramadan is a beautiful way of teaching people empathy and teaching our children, but the best way to show empathy is to be empathic ourselves.
MashaAllah, definitely, indeed. It's hard to understand empathy and to put ourselves in other people's shoes, but we have a month here that we can experience some of this, to be able to understand how others are going through difficult situations and not have food, and help our children to think about that. And actually, as you were talking there, I was thinking, our children, when we do shuras and things like this in the family, and we have family discussions, and as you said, everybody has a chance to talk and contribute, children come up with wonderful ideas, absolutely magnificent ways and goals and projects that they would like to do. And I think they just need an opportunity to be listened to and support in achieving even one of those goals over Ramadan. So it's a lovely time for parents, if they've never done this before, to actually sit down together as a family, as you say, set the environment, and have some discussion around. We weren't allowing everybody to speak, and then listen to each child to know what is it that they could do, what would Ramadan mean to them, and what could they do to help others in Ramadan, and to nurture those values through that process. MashaAllah, I think it's a lovely time for doing this. Alhamdulillah.
Absolutely, and is how we encourage the children to be part of that process by, as you said, creativity is so wonderful, and children can be very creative when they are supported to be creative. So part of that, maybe in Ramadan, we make a calendar, and for example, on that calendar we get the children to write the calendar and put dua every day, for each, when we break our fast, or when we have sahur, we make a dua, or during the day, what is the dua I'm going to be making today? Or maybe we connect to the calendar with something, with an action, maybe every day we put £1 or 50 pence aside, or whatever we can as a family, as the children, we can help them to put it in a tin. And by the end of Ramadan, we give that tin to a local charity or someone who's in need. Part of that is, teaching our children, maybe how to go and visit our extended family, like, our relatives, our elderly relatives, or members of our family, and take some food for them, or take some, so showing generosity, so those kind of things will develop. The other thing I think is just important, to sit down and to take time and to have like a brainstorming kind of session where we think, okay, what does everyone want to do? How can we support you? What is your goal this year, Ramadan? and how are you going to achieve that goal, and what kind of tools do you need to achieve that goal, and what sort of support do you need. So we enable this idea of engagement, of collaboration, of ta'awun. وَتَعَاوَنُوا عَلَى الْبِرِّ وَالتَّقْوَى. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, collaborate to establish righteousness and consciousness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the way to do that is by the collaboration and the engagement of the husband and the wife, the spouses, showing to their children and demonstrating it through actions, inshallah.
Inshallah. And I'm glad you moved on to husband and wife, because we need to look at that, because they are the leaders of that family, alhamdulillah, and the children are going to be looking at them, and if they are saying something to their children, you must be doing this or you should be doing that, but not doing it themselves, that's giving very bad mixed messages there, and children get confused. So how can we help our couples that are tuned into us this evening to build that relationship during Ramadan?
The key thing, I think, is, as you know, Sister Kathleen, we talk about always in relationships, is communication, and is about how the family see the husband and the wife communicate effectively with each other. And to show that example is how they demonstrate partnership. You know, the thing is, with marriage is a partnership, and parenting is a partnership, and achieving goodness is a partnership. We can see in the hadith of Prophet ﷺ that he said, "Kullukum ra'in wa kullukum mas'ulun an ra'iyat." Every one of you is a shepherd, and every shepherd is responsible for their flock. Meaning that level of responsibility, and having that level of responsibility means that we can't function alone. You know, the marriage is about collaboration. The marriage is about partnership. But also, the marriage is about people having different needs, and these needs being considered and fulfilled. So one of the things that we can think about is that ta'awun, that collaboration. But also, we think about before that, you know, how the husband and the wife show ta'aluf and love and connection towards each other, in terms of being able to, we spoke earlier about mawaddah and rahmah. How do they demonstrate these values in their relationship as a married couple? How do they show to their children the level of connection and communication, being able to compromise, being able to resolve conflict, being able to deal with disagreements, being able to deal with the in-laws and the extended family, being able to develop healthy relationship and model that healthy relationship? There are so many things that, you know, we overlook, and often we might focus on, you know, providing the food and make sure we have lots of food in the house and we have the fridges full. But sometimes what we lack is the homes being full of goodness, being full of kindness, being full of, you know, sometimes the emptiness and the poverty is not the poverty of wealth and resources, but often the poverty is the poverty of lack of emotions and healthy feelings that the family has. And what we see in counseling and therapy, as you know, Sister Kathleen, often people come to therapy because they lack that listening ear. You know, they're not being heard by their own family members. They've been often afflicted with pain by their own family members. Sometimes they, you know, there is abuse often, which, you know, may Allah protect us all. And I hope that, you know, Ramadan is the month of healing, the month of reviving, you know, the family and enabling each other to flourish and grow, inshallah. So I think it's really important that the husband and the family have this responsibility, husband and the wife have this responsibility in the family to show good example, to be a qudwa, to be a role model. And the only way we can do that is to look at their marital values, to look at how they effectively respond to each other, how they support one another, how they encourage each other, and that will filter through to the children.
MashaAllah, Jazakallah khairan for this. And of course, you mentioned there may be abuse, and I know you've often mentioned before that if there is something like this happening, we urge our whoever it is that's been the victim to go and seek help. There is lots of help there, lots of advice, lots of people that can help you. So please do seek help for yourselves, inshallah, and get that proper help. We're just going into a commercial break in a few minutes, Brother Saeed, and I do want to come back kind of and talk a bit more about that husband and wife relationship, and especially around the communication that is so important, and how we can support them maybe with some tips around communication to be able to use this month to start talking to each other better, to start understanding each other better, to start having those better relationships, inshallah. After this commercial break, we'll go a little bit more deeper, if that's okay with you.
Inshallah. Jazakallah khair.
Inshallah. Listeners, do tune into us after this commercial break, inshallah, where we're going to be continuing talking about Ramadan and how we can make the most of Ramadan in our family environment, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum. Assalamu alaikum, rahmatullah barakatuh, parents. Welcome back to part 2 of Parenting Hour. We're here in the first week of Ramadan, alhamdulillah, with our wonderful brother Saeed. Sheikh Saeed has given us a lot of valuable knowledge, mashallah. And this evening we are looking at the family environment and developing that. And we talked a lot about the family environment in the first half, and we left the first half talking about the husband and wife and the examples they give and how they are the part or the glue or the key to helping the family to achieve the best in Ramadan, inshallah. Brother Saeed, you mentioned about communication between husband and wife, and communication, I know we could have a whole show about it, but we don't have time for that this evening, unfortunately, because we have other things to talk about as well this week. But if we can just kind of give our parents that are listening in some sort of tips around how can they be better communicators and understand each other in this blessed month.
Jazakumullah khair, Sister Kathleen, and all the listeners. I hope that, month of Ramadan, inshallah, will bring that positive change in communication. And also, we often see in couple counseling and marital counseling that often one of the causes of disharmony in the family is lack of communication. So communication is so effective, so important and vital to a successful relationship and a successful family. So if you think about communication, is made out of 3 things. Is made out of the words we say, how we say them, and how we show in our body language what we mean. So, Sister Kathleen, and this is one of the questions you ask us a lot when we do our training, and we ask people who come to our courses. Often we say body language, tone of voice, and words. And each one has a percentage, to make that totality of communication. And we know that, words, we use a lot of words, but often what tone of voice are we using? What sort of body language are we exhibiting when we say those words? And often body language takes the bulk of, how we effectively communicate with each other, the tone of voice, and then the words. But often we pay so much attention to the words without paying attention to the other aspects of communication. So it's very important to communicate effectively and use those tools. And one of the things that is really important is when we communicate with each other is do not talk at the same time. Listen and give each other the right time to speak and enough time to speak. Couples sometimes, speak over each other and they're not listening to one another. So one of the things that, is so important and vital is listening, and especially listening to children. Often we're busy, the mother might be cooking in the kitchen. The father might be just come back from work and he's tired and he's not listening, and the child has got something to say. And they say, no, I'll listen to you later. I don't have time now. I'm busy. I'm going to go to the supermarket to get some things. And then that moment is lost. And the child might not communicate again. or the husband and the wife are not listening to each other, how can we encourage the children to speak if we're not showing them that we are talking to one another and we listen? So it seems obvious, but often when we have a lot of emotions, a lot of responsibilities, a lot of tasks to do, this kind of can be lost in the family environment. Thinking before we speak, being careful with our words, especially during Ramadan. We know that all our words in our lives, we will be accountable for them. But Ramadan also is how we refine our speech, how we modify our speech. Our tongues will be, whatever we speak with our tongues will be made accountable. So instead of using language that might not be appropriate or might not be conducive to making a good family environment, using goodness in our words, remembering Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, following the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ in terms of how to have good manners in speech and how to use speech in a very positive manner, inshallah. Be considerate in our communication. So sometimes, choosing the right moment and time to speak. Sometimes if someone is under stress, if the mother is in the kitchen and she's cooking for the family, and then to consider, that maybe now is not the time to have a discussion about something, maybe now this is the time to support her, help her out. Or the husband just come back from work and he's tired or got a headache. It's not probably the time now to have a very important family discussion, maybe to allow people to rest. And then we can choose the time and the place and the space where we can talk to each other effectively. And it's really important to kind of be considerate and be thoughtful. The other thing I think is just to think about our words in a way that we say them, and to think about how the other person is going to receive them. And it's really important that, if I want someone to understand me, I have to think about how do I approach that person? What are the keys that I need to enable that person to listen to me or to receive me in a positive manner? And it's sticking to the facts. Sometimes, when we upset and we're angry, we can start throwing things around and saying, no, you haven't done this or you never do this. But just to be careful how we communicate in a way that we don't generalize, we don't start accusing people in our communication, we don't, and be sincere and honest with each other. I think that's really important. We said earlier about sincerity, honesty. The month of Ramadan is the month of good akhlaq, good manners, and sincerity and honesty are very important for us in terms of how we are with each other in the marriage, as a family, and also as a society.
Mm-hmm. MashaAllah. Our listeners this evening, of course, are listening in very intensely. And because they are not involved in this conversation that we're having and not contributing to it, they are listening. So they're just taking it all in. So they're not thinking of how do I respond to this or what do I answer back as we're talking, because there's not that opportunity for them to do that. So this is a good example of how to listen in and how to absorb things in and to control your emotions so that you're really there in the present and listening to what's being said, and maybe practice this at home as well. So not thinking about, I think, how do I need to answer this and how do I need to build up an excuse for myself or what do I need to say next, but rather listen in. And as you mentioned, mashallah, as you were talking there. So I was just thinking that this is what we're doing at the moment and doing live here at the moment in the studio, and our listeners listening in is they're learning those tools, mashallah, without even knowing that.
Inshallah. And I think it's demonstrating that communication, but also just reminding each other. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, وَذَكِّرْ فَإِنَّ الذِّكْرَى تَنْفَعُ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ. Remind the reminders of benefit to the believers. And sometimes we forget, and the life is so busy, life is so demanding, but sometimes it's really important to go back to basics. Think about those important things and to reflect. I think we said, and I keep emphasizing the point that Ramadan is a month of reflection. And when we reflect, we learn and we relearn things and we modify and refine and move forward. And that's what Ramadan does, enable us to be the best we can be when we are watchful of our words, watchful about how we communicate, watchful what we say and how we listen to each other. Inshallah, those will be good habits. And psychologists say, if you want to develop a habit, a good habit, you need to repeat it between 6 and 21 times in order for that routine to become a habit. But Ramadan, we got 30 days to develop good habits. So imagine if you develop a good habit every day, you practice good listening every day, you practice good communication every day. Ramadan, you practice generosity, kindness, mercy, forgiveness, and every day, then inshallah, after Ramadan, they become part of us. They become part of our skill set, inshallah.
Inshallah, mashallah. And I love the way that you mentioned in doing this, that we actually separate our facts and our emotions and make sure we have our facts right and get them across, and the emotions that we feel as well, but not to be concise, not to take up a half an hour talking over what could happen in 5 minutes, for example. That we're there mindful of our time as well as the words we're saying, which brings us in a little bit into parenting styles as well, and helping our families to look at their parenting styles and what they're teaching their children through these parenting styles in communication with the facts, with the emotions, with demonstrating love to each other, with holding the family together, and helping our children grow and develop and get the most of Ramadan as well, for the children as well as themselves. How can we help our parents? What types of parenting should our parents be doing for this month?
I think the biggest example, or the biggest parenting approach, is to be a good example. I think, parents, sometimes we talk a lot to our children, but often what children learn from the biggest example they learn is they observe and they follow actions. The Arab poet, he said, وَيَنْشَأْ نَاشِئُ الْفِتْيَانِ مِنَّا عَلَى مَا كَانَ عَوَّدَهُ أَبُوهُ. Any child grows and is raised upon what the parent has taught them and showed them, and teaching children through example. So the way to be positive around children, to have a positive approach, and to be able to be balanced in our approach. If you think about the styles of parenting, there are those people who parent and they're very just discipline orientated, or there are other parents who are kind of disengaged and they just let everything happen, or there are other people who kind of think about their parenting and they are positive and they are proactive. So let me give you an example. Imagine you're breaking your fast and you got this beautiful carpet you just purchased for Eid, and you want to show it to your family, and then when they come to visit, and one of the children spilled some juice on the carpet. So your response or your reaction as a parent will determine how you are as a parent. So one parent might start shouting and screaming and say, look, what you've done, the carpet is brand new and you're destroying it, and we just bought it for Eid, and look what you've done. So imagine that kind of level of behavior. What does that do to the child? The child will grow up thinking, this is my fault, I'm always making mistakes, I'm not a good person. They will feel guilty, they will feel shame, they will feel sad. And how that child will feel, and that might stay with them for the rest of their life, because that's the memory they will have. Remember when Ramadan, every time they come to Ramadan, when my mom or my dad humiliated me, shouted at me, made this into like a big issue. Or on the other hand, there might be another parent who might do nothing. You just go and clean the orange juice or whatever juice they spilled on the carpet, without teaching the child any kind of level of responsibility or any kind of way of how to deal with things. And then the third parent will say to the child, don't worry, accidents happen, we make mistakes, is not a problem. Why don't we go and get some cleaning material so we can clean the carpet together, and we can remove, that juice from the carpet, and it's not a problem. Don't worry about it. I'll support you to clean it. So the child will learn from that last action that, we make mistakes. We are human beings. We're not all we don't have to be perfect all the time. And at the same time, they will learn that when you make a mistake, you try and fix it. You try and remedy to the best of your ability. And also they will learn how to collaborate. So their mom or dad help them to get rid of that problem, to resolve that problem, to manage the situation in a better way. So they will learn the art of collaboration and ta'awun, and being able to engage in a way that is collaborative. So that's one way, just one example of demonstrating different parenting styles, how the parent is responsive rather than reactive will help the child to develop. Even from mistakes, we will use them as a learning opportunity. So sometimes, if something happens, instead of looking at it as a disaster and thinking, why did you have to spill the orange juice on the carpet? Because I use it an opportunity to learn and to teach the child that you make a mistake, but is how you recover from the mistake, is how you are able to rectify and remedy what has happened.
MashaAllah, MashaAllah. It's lovely the way that example that you've given. And of course, some parents, this may be the first time that they're hearing about this, and they may have a different style of parenting, that they may have themselves have grown up in a very disciplined family and not realize that there's other types of parenting, because often we don't know, we don't think about these things until we hear about it, and then we reflect on it. And this is a lovely month, alhamdulillah, to be able to reflect on our parenting styles and what kind of parent am I? Am I a disciplinarian, as you mentioned, and very strict in everything I do, or am I the opposite? Because some families, they are like this, that the parenting styles are just very relaxed completely. Everybody can do what they want, when they want, how they want, and parents don't take control of the family. So I love the way you've brought that together in this example of spilling a drink, and how we can be better parents, inshallah, if we think about that and think about how we're going to raise our children. And maybe this is a time that now in Ramadan, if you're hearing this for the first time, or even if you want to modify your parenting, that you're using this month with Allah's blessing to enable you to do this, to enable you to change. Next week we have Easter holidays, so it might be a good time when there's less stresses to get children out in the morning for school, and hopefully parents will have a little bit time off as well. And if mums are working, that they're not rushing around as much, that hopefully they'll have some time off for themselves as well during the Easter, to be able to think about how they can change their parenting styles to make that environment better environment, a more nurturing, a more inclusive environment, inshallah, for everybody.
Inshallah. I think it's really important that we kind of think about our parenting style, and maybe Ramadan, as we said, is a month of reflection. Ask yourself the question, what kind of parent am I to my children? And what sort of parents do I want to be? And what sort of parent do I want to show? What sort of example do I want to set? And those kind of things are very important to think about and to determine, and use Ramadan as a turning point, as we said earlier, and think about how the family environment is so important and so vital, and think about your own parenting, and what were the positive and what were the negative. So if you had negative experience, how can you change that, and how you become a better parent and remove those harmful styles that you experience and they weren't supportive or helpful. And then think about your own parenting as well, that if you had positive parenting and you had good parents who supported you and who nurtured you and who gave you those skills, how and created positive memories for you around Ramadan, how can you use that to help your children to create their own memories with you? And when, in a few years' time, when they are a lot older, they would look back and say, look, my parent taught me this. My parents, they will make dua for you. And we know the Prophet ﷺ said, when the son of Adam passes away, their deed will stop, their actions will, their deeds will cease, apart from three sources. And one of them is to have righteous children who will make dua. So if we want our children to make dua for us, what sort of parents are we to them?
MashaAllah, that's very deep to think about indeed. But what an opportunity for change if you want to make things better. And even if you are the best of parents, inshallah, we all try our best and be the best of parents. How can we be better? How can we? There's always room for improvement. There's always room for looking at ourselves and how can we be better people, be better to our spouses, be, I know you mentioned a lot there about the spouses, but it actually comes back again, doesn't it, to the spouses? And sometimes in some families, we don't have father and mother within that relationship. So maybe we could talk a little bit about that. If there is not two parents in that relationship, what can they do? And then maybe we can talk about it also at the other side. If there's an extended family in the relationship, what can we do? So if there is only a one parent family, and I know some of our listeners are like this one parent family, how can they help to have a better family environment, inshallah?
I think it's all about it goes back to the principle of accountability and personal responsibility. So, whether the family has that kind of husband and wife, or there might be in a single parent family, it's about the adults showing the example and role modeling the good behavior. And I think the key thing is also sometimes it's about accessing support as well. And knowing that, we have our own struggles, whether people live in, as couples or, as a family with extended family, or they might live, by themselves. The key thing is to do what is right and to seek support and to learn. So we said, Ramadan is the month of knowledge and learning. So it's about maybe looking at evaluating, our parenting styles, evaluating our relationship with our children, and evaluating what we do and how is our family environment, and thinking about options and thinking about solutions and looking forward to say, okay, I'm doing this, but it's not working. So how can I do something different? Or I'm doing something good, but I need support to maintain this. What sort of support can I access? Mm-hmm. Or maybe I need to learn something. I need to relearn this behavior and learn something better. What sort of learning do I need, and how I can go to help me to progress? So I think is a lot of the things that we do is to create that family unit, regardless of how many members of the family, is about creating that environment where each member of that family, regardless of how many people in the family, or if both family, spouses are separated or whatever, is to create that level of support. So each person is trying to be that light in the family that guides people to goodness. That person is setting the tone and the example with their behavior, with their how they're showing, values of goodness, inshallah.
Inshallah, mashallah. We're in the last 3 minutes of the show, and I do want to touch on grandparents and how can they be the light. If you can just give a quick example. Indeed, I know both of us are grandparents, so how can you help us both to be better indeed?
I think grandparents, mashallah, they have so much experience and they have so much love to give to their grandchildren. I think the main thing is about, being that person, to take the pressure off the parents and help out whenever, in any way you can. But also, I think sitting with the children and telling them stories about your memories of Ramadan, how you were with your parents in Ramadan, showing them, that connection with their extended family members, through that love, through that connection, through belonging into that family, and demonstrating. I think Ramadan is sitting, as a family together and being able to share stories, maybe telling them about, values that you want to see in your grandchildren, and maybe teaching them, the right ways of behaving and the right ways through the example. I think it's about everyone playing their part. Grandparents have their part to play, parents have their part to play, children have their part to play, and it's everyone supporting each other and complementing each other to bring the best in Ramadan. So I think in Ramadan, inshallah, also grandparents, through their generosity toward the grandchildren, spending time with them, being able to take care of them, that level of care and connection. So thinking about care, think about connection, think about compassion, and think about teaching, in a way, not through words, but through actions, inshallah, through modeling behavior.
Wonderful, mashallah, what lovely examples there. I mean, and I think it's a lovely time, as you say, through those stories and talking about different cultures and bringing culture alive again in this blessed holy month as well, and will help the children, inshallah, to understand the times of the Prophet ﷺ and the companions as well, and their culture at that time when we talk about this.
Absolutely. And maybe, the grandparents, sitting with their grandchildren, reading Quran to them, reading Quranic stories, reading, Seerah of the Prophet ﷺ, being able to stories. Through that, inshallah, there's so much to learn and so much to gain in Ramadan, and so much to benefit from Ramadan, inshallah.
Inshallah. Jazakallah khairan, Brother Saeed. Again, we've come to the end of the show. Would you believe time goes by so quickly here? But this was a lovely show around family environment, and I'm sure our listeners picked up a lot of tips, inshallah. Inshallah, Ramadan is going well for everybody. Keep us all in your du'as, inshallah. Jazakallah khairan, Brother Saeed.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.